My name is Caitlin Falzone, and for my research project, I decided to focus on self-presentation theory proposed by Erving Goffman. And for my project, I didn't just want to focus on the theory itself in a broad sense, but I really wanted to focus in on self-presentation theory and how it is used in the internet. Mainly when I speak about the internet, especially in my paper, I do focus on social media networks. And social media networks are something that everyone can really relate to, since most people use social media networks, and statistics show that Facebook and MySpace are still the two most commonly used social media networks, along with blogging coming up. And another form of online social networking that we're using that is on the high rise is online dating, whether we'd like to believe it or not. Most people do connect now through online environments rather than face-to-face interaction. So I thought that this would be an interesting way to go. So first, I'd like to describe to you self-presentation theory. It originally was proposed by Erving Goffman, and he had described this theory in his book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. And Leary and Kowalski describe self-presentation as the process by which individuals attempt to control the impressions others form of them. It seems like a pretty basic concept when you think of it that way, but really there are so many different factors, and in my research paper I really wanted to focus on not only the different social media platforms that are used, but I wanted to show the differences in the factors that make us present ourselves in different ways on these social media platforms, and why that may be. Why are these platforms different? And when I talk about the platforms, I'm really talking about the four. As I said before, the four big social media platforms today are Facebook, MySpace, blogging, and online dating. So my paper really focuses on these four and the different factors that really make us present ourselves in different ways than we would normally on the other sites. So it really is a compare and contrast element to it. And then I want to describe to you why this may be so, and why in Facebook there are different factors that make us, present ourselves in a different way than we would on MySpace or in blogging sites. I really wanted to describe that sense of it, since scholars already know that we are presenting ourselves in different ways online as opposed to offline and face-to-face interactions. But I wanted to focus on the individual networks themselves, because I feel like that is such an open venue for discussion. And with social media even on the rise, new elements are constantly at play. I feel like this is something that we should definitely learn about, and you may actually learn something about yourselves. So the self-presentation in just online communities at first. First, I started out with this, and I really wanted to show that impression management is a big factor in self-presentation. Now, self-presentation started out first, or the presentational self, as it is in our textbook in Littlejohn and Foss. That's how it's actually brought up in our earlier chapters. Now, early on, it was known as the presentational self, or self-presentation theory, but it evolved into impression management because that was more adaptable to different things. But in most of the research that I found, they used these terms interchangeably. So in my paper, I also adapted that. Two different factors are at large here in online communities that affect our self-presentation. It's the type of community and personal goals. Now, the type of community can either be a common identity or a common bond community, which I describe in my paper. Based on those two different communities, we would act a different way. And also based on our personal goals. we would have different personal goals than we would have on Facebook, than we would on online dating sites. Now, an online dating site, we would be looking for a romantic partner or an intimate partner, someone to spend the rest of our life with. On Facebook, it would be a little bit different because we would be looking for friendship or continuing friendship. So then we'll go to Facebook first. So the first factor that influences self-presentation on Facebook is the venue. It could be either private or a public venue. So for public, and most of you who use Facebook will understand what I'm saying, the public venue being the status update, the private venue being the private message, and the in-between being the wall post. Semi-private, semi-public, so it really falls into play. It also is in our language style. Studies show that our language style changes based on these venues. So in a public venue or in our status update, we are much more upbeat and positive. We provide positive emotions in our style of speaking, whereas in private venues and private messages, we show more negative emotion, and that's because studies also show that in public venues, negative emotions are frowned upon. People were being unsubscribed to, unfriended if they were giving negative emotions in public venues. So really, in this particular study that I focused on, they were, the people were very, very weary of the language styles they gave off based on that venue. Another thing that, another factor, the third factor that influences our self-presentation on Facebook is our personality traits. So in our book, it also says the 5-factor model, or the big 5 personality traits. And based on these personality traits, we would be, we would purvey a different self-presentation. So the big 5 traits, they link to goals to aid in understanding why certain individuals would select various self-presentation tactics. And secondary goals are the fourth factor that I found to influence self-presentation in Facebook. So secondary goals are ongoing concerns, and individuals, we attend these secondary goals during persuasive episodes, and they can be viewed as constraints that shape how the influence attempt is approached and enacted. Secondary goals, because they are in back of primary goals, they can be adapted to different contexts and different scenarios, so they are more adapted towards our goals on Facebook or our goals in general, and we are able to adapt them because they are a little more broad, they're a little more general, we can adapt them in. So next we will go, I'll describe the 5-factor model, and like I said, this is also in our books, but the big 5 personality traits are openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, and neuroticism. These 5 traits basically describe how we would self-present on Facebook. So open users were more likely to blog and reveal personal information in their online profiles, which may be no surprise. Conscientious social networking users presented themselves in consistent ways with group norms, similar to their self-perceptions of what they think about themselves, and they took on fewer distinctive personas, which I felt very interesting. Agreeable people give a more consistent and authentic version of themselves in self-presentations online, and these individuals actually have a greater perceived control over their online self-presentation. They also may use social media to show actual traits of themselves rather than changing their self-presentation as an attention-seeking device. Extroverts, they strive to present the same qualities they present in person and are more likely to use self-presentation tactics online than if they were to do in a face-to-face interaction. neurotic individuals were what I thought was the most interesting, because I always thought psychology was interesting and psychology and communication was interesting, but neurotic individuals actually become anxious about self-presentation, and they tend to present themselves in different ways than their own self-perceptions, and that was just a big interest to me. So next we have MySpace. The three factors on MySpace that influence our different self-presentations. One is the motivations for creating a page. Many studies found that based on what we wanted to create a page for on MySpace contributed to how much information we actually revealed. When an individual uses MySpace for purposes for keeping updated with friends, they're more likely to present more information about themselves. However, in other studies, individuals using their MySpace profiles for networking, identifying dating partners, or establishing serious relationships, they were more cautious about the type of information and the amount of information that they revealed on their profiles. In these instances, for dating, establishing serious relationships, the users wanted to present their best self and put their best self forward, which again, very interesting. The second factor is privacy. Now, on MySpace, they're a little lax on their privacy efforts, as Facebook is, brought up the option of their privacy settings, and they perfected them to tailor any type of person, whoever would want any level of privacy. MySpace, however, is not as evolved as Facebook, so privacy is a factor. Leaving a favorable impression of someone can clash with maintaining your privacy. You want to disclose that information in an online profile on the one hand, but then you worry about privacy on the other, which is commonly known as the privacy paradox. Users may develop new self-presentation strategies, such as indirect self-presentation via groups on MySpace, to reach a compromise between their privacy concerns and their need for effective self-presentation. Also, the age. Now, age was one of the most interesting things I thought about MySpace, because when I was a teenager, MySpace was a big thing, and I realized if I could go back to my MySpace page, how much would I have on my MySpace page? Age. The research that I found, the younger that you are, you actually were willing to give more information and more personal information, such as your gender, your hometown. The older the people were, they were not as forgiving. They were very private on their MySpace, and since it actually was proven that older generations had Facebook, which increases the privacy concerns, whereas the younger adults are more into MySpace. So it just shows how open you are. In blogging, we have three different factors that influence our self-presentation. The first being cultural backgrounds. Now, in the study that I'm referring to in my paper, you have collectivistic versus individualistic societies, and based on that background, you're willing to give more information about yourself or less information about yourself, and more information about your group or your society. And this was mainly based on Asian cultures versus American or Western societies. The second factor was the context and the people inhabiting context. And the context And blogging, depending on what your topic is. Many bloggers choose a specific topic that they wish to use, and they really do stick to it. And based on what it is, if they're about gardening, they may not give up. If their blog is about gardening, they may not be giving as much self-disclosure about themselves other than their love of gardening. If their blog is about their life as a government employee, I'll just say, for example, because that's what my personal blog is about, then they may be willing to give off more information. So the third one is an open forum. Blogging leads for an open self-disclosure forum. It's known, and people are more likely to self-disclose in blogging because it's writing. It's an open venue for self-disclosure, whereas MySpace, you really don't have that opportunity to self-disclose about yourself in the most open ways. The last one is online dating. Online dating was probably the largest portion, and there are of my research, and there are a lot of research studies out there that focus on self-presentation and online dating sites. First, the first factor was anticipation of future face-to-face interactions. People in online dating were actually more honest about themselves and their personality traits because there is the anticipation of future face-to-face interactions, which I felt to be very interesting. There's also the risk of misrepresentation. They risk that people risk that they will be misrepresented online, and then when they do have that face-to-face interaction, they won't be understood. They feel like they may have misled someone, even though their intentions may not, so they will try to steer clear of being so open in online dating. And physical attractiveness, actually. That was also a big one. If people were more physically attractive than others, then they tended to be less descriptive of their physical attractions and more descriptive of their mind, whereas those who were less physically attractive actually played up their physical attributes, which was very weird to me, since that would be something that I would want to downplay if I felt like I wasn't very physically attractive in an online dating site. But that's just me. And in conclusion, I found that the factors that influence our self-presentation are dependent on the online community. As you can see, different in Facebook, MySpace, blogging, online dating, and our personal goals and our personality traits really do play into all four different platforms. Interaction situations and scenarios, based on our interaction with people, what we're there for on that website, we will act differently. And for future research, I would love to see some studies comparing all four of them. I don't have the tools to do a full-fledged research analysis that I would like to do, but hopefully I can make this into some sort of thesis, a doctorate thesis, something of that, but that's what I would like to see in future research. I hope you all enjoyed my presentation, and if I can clear up anything, or if you would have any interest in reading my paper, or seeing some of my sources, or even just discussing this topic, I would be more than welcome to do so, as I found this to be very interesting. I hope you all have a wonderful year, and I hope you all enjoyed this class. Have a good day.